We'll call this meeting to order. May 25th, 2023 council meeting. We do have two councillors that are away at the FCN conference in Toronto, so I will need a motion to excuse Councillor Sandra and Holly Johnson. Lynette makes that motion. All in favor, please indicate. That is carried. Thank you. Sorry. Okay. Thank you. We've just been noted that we're waiting for more attendees at our meeting, so we'll just hold for a moment. Thank you. Yeah. So we have had a motion to excuse Councillors Sandra and Holly Johnson. We have the minutes of the May 11th meeting. Any comments or corrections that need to be made, or a motion to approve the minutes of the May 11th, 2023 meeting would be in order? Neil?
I'd make that motion.
Thank you. All in favor of passing the minutes? That's carried. Thank you. Call for post-agenda items. Are there any post-agenda items that need to be added to our agenda? Nothing? Yeah, we've just the in-camera at the end of the meeting, but that's good. Adoption of the agenda, and just a couple of notes regarding the agenda. At 10:30, we will be considering bylaw number 2044-23, our animal control bylaw. At 11:30, we will open a public hearing dealing with a number of bylaws as indicated on the agenda. Then at 11 or 12 o'clock, we will have Nathan Crosby and the Brooks Bandits coming in to recognize their achievements of the recent of the last season, and also enjoying lunch together with them. And then at 1 o'clock, Nathan will be presenting to us, as well as at 1:30, Stuart Lucchese will be giving us an update on the wildfire situation. So that is details of the agenda. Is there anything else to add to the agenda, or a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Kelly, motion. Thank you. All in favor of approving the agenda? That is carried. Thank you. We'll now move to question period or notices of motion. Are there any questions? Todd, do you have anything online?
There are no questions online.
Thank you. Anybody in the audience want to ask questions this morning? Seeing none, we'll move ahead, and I'm going to suggest we go to item number 10.1, our agriculture fieldman's report. Todd, are you able to join us down here?
I will be right there.
Thank you. Mr. Todd Green, welcome. Welcome.
Good morning from the room. All right, so I'll be very quick. I think we've talked about some of this stuff in the past informally. Obviously, we had a nice dry spring. It's still dry. We have not accumulated much moisture yet, so the gopher populations are probably going to be a little higher this year, and probably even into next year as that works. Also grasshoppers, so if you're talking to some of your producers, starting to hear some complaints about grasshoppers that are already starting to feed, so some caution there. The one thing I am happy to report about is we had very little to no soil erosion work this spring. Yeah, there was only one day. I had some concerns, a very strong wind. Guys were just kind of getting ready to start planting or do some pre-plant work. I took a tour around some of our more soil erosion prone areas, and I was super pumped to see nothing was mobile and everything looked very locked in. So really appreciate the producers' efforts in that regard. Seed drills have been out like crazy. These are our old numbers now because I had to write this last week. But yeah, we're kind of in that probably 1,500 acres area so far. Not a whole bunch of action on the equipment rental side. This time of year is not super busy, but a couple sprayers, a couple livestock equipment. There's been the barbecue's been going out more recently quite a bit, but when I wrote this, it had only gone out 5 times. We do have some big survey plans this year in cooperation with the province. So our club route survey that we do towards the end of July, we do a Fusarium graminearum survey. If you guys remember, maybe not, it might have been just before you guys got here. The province removed Fusarium graminearum from the Alberta Agricultural Pest Act, but we still want to monitor it a little bit. So they require our help with that. We obviously look for grasshoppers, and bacterial ring rot is in potatoes, and blackleg is something that we haven't done a lot of inspecting for in probably the last 20 years locally, but it's kind of a little bit of a resurgence, so we're going to help out the province a little bit with that. And then we're doing a weed survey with Ag Canada, which is only 15 fields, and they pay us $100 a field to help them out, so it's a good excuse to get out and look at 15 fields, I guess. And they do all the legwork, which is amazing. They contact the landowner. All we have to do is literally show up and count any weeds that are left on July 15th in crops. So that's pretty lucky. We have been out crushing downy brome. April 28th, that started this year. We still think there's going to be a massive resurgence in downy brome germination whenever the heck we get our first rain of the season. That downy brome acts as a winter annual and as an annual weed, so it can germinate in the fall or the spring. So we're hoping we don't have to go back to a whole bunch of areas, but we know there will be some. Roadside spraying will kick off before our next meeting, so really happy with that. Again, be nice to get that first rain. I'm like a broken record. You'd almost, no, I'm not going to say it. But we will try to get over 600 miles before we finish off the season. Emerson Park had a really good opening weekend. We were pretty pumped. We're impressed with how it looks, and I think our in-house designs that we did on the upgrade last fall, they're really going to turn out 100%. We once that grass really gets established in the new areas, it's just going to look amazing. Right now we're trying to limit a little bit that fresh seeding until those roots kind of can hold some of that down. Campers are wonderful, but we want to put out our mat, out the door, and that can really hurt the new grass. So we're trying to limit it a little bit. The patrons have been just amazing in helping out too. So Hamlet, subdivisions, airports, all our contract mowing, we're rolling now, which is good because it's like May 25th. If we're not rolling by now, we might as well shut her down. Then last thing on the record, that Know Your Food Ag Day, we just did a little bit of a debrief with the principal from Alcoma School, Ms. Screever, and the Ag for Life. It was amazing. The feedback we heard from teachers was also good. They indicated, the teachers and some of the administration, that from Grasslands, that it would be a valuable thing to do again. So we're going to try to learn from some of our hiccups and maybe mistakes, and try to make it better at some point in time. And there's lots of ways to do that. But we talked about it before. 800 kids, 10 different exhibits, 3 days. It was amazing. And then, of course, just to talk a little bit about our wonderful crew, because they're all amazing. We added 3 new faces. We're super pumped about them. They fit right in, and they're already obviously working. So we do spend a considerable amount of time learning and relearning tasks with our seasonal team. We find that helps a lot in the first week of their employment, and we are really looking forward to a very busy, productive year.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Are there any questions for Todd this morning from council?
I spoke so fast. Did anybody actually hear what I had to say?
I heard it all.
Awesome.
Heard it all.
Awesome.
It's great. Lynette, please.
Where have we been seeing the grasshopper problems?
Well, they'll start to move in a little bit. Specifically, I don't know, just kind of hear the grumblings, right? You start seeing the populations come up, but typically they'll move off of grassland into your field edges first. And I would say I've heard more complaints south of us, not in our county yet, but we're usually a few weeks delayed.
Thank you. Any other questions? One from the We don't typically take public questions. We don't want to appreciate your presence here, but we can work through one of us at some point if we need to, but Todd will be around as well, I think, if you want to talk to Todd directly. Any other questions from council to Todd? Seeing none, thank you. A motion to approve our agriculture fieldman's report would be in order. Amanda, please. All in favor, please indicate. That is carried. Thank you. And being very close to 10:30, I'm going to suggest we move to item number 8.2. Sorry, I'm shuffling through my papers here. Bylaw number 204423, our animal control bylaw, second and third reading. And welcome our community peace officer to make a presentation, please. Our request for decision, right?
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I was bringing in today for second and third readings for the animal control bylaw. So after the animal control bylaw was given first reading on January 26th, Municipal Enforcement conducted an education campaign and the public was notified about the proposed changes through the county website, social media.
Excuse me, can I get you just to lean into that mic a little bit?
I can do
just
that for you.
So for clarity of communication.
It's a little hard to get close sometimes with this. Sorry about that. So yeah, the public was notified through the county website, social media, the Brooks Bulletin, and the radio. Municipal Enforcement encouraged residents to complete a survey. We had 169 surveys completed, with 67 respondents wanting to be contacted by Municipal Enforcement regarding the bylaw and further clarifications. There were 6 yes/no questions asked regarding the proposed changes that would affect residents regarding livestock, dogs, and chickens. Majority of the respondents did not agree with increasing the minimum parcel size from 1 acre to 2 acres. Most respondents agreed with keeping livestock on parcels greater than 2 acres within specified residential areas. That definition has been changed, and then increasing the numbers of dogs from 3 to 4. The majority supported waiving the licensing requirements to have chickens. And during conversations with residents, the common theme of the conversations was that municipal enforcement should focus on owners not properly caring for their animals or allowing animals to become a nuisance. There was lots of confusion with the definition of the specified residential areas. And municipal enforcement made changes to the proposed bylaw based on the survey feedback. The specified residential areas definition was removed and replaced with definitions for hamlets and multi-lot residential subdivisions. And municipal enforcement is looking for council direction on livestock in hamlets and in multi-lot residential subdivisions. So in the proposed bylaw, municipal enforcement recommends updating the definitions as per the attached proposed bylaw. Livestock continue to be allowed on parcels larger than 1 acre in hamlets and multi-lot subdivisions. Eliminating the need for chicken licensing and then increasing chickens and hamlets from 4 to 5. And that's just the way we worked out the grid on the back. We have 0.25 chickens, so then that would just equal out to 5. And then all other rules pertaining to the number of chickens that property owners are allowed to have remain in place in hamlets. Then adding in a section to prohibit chickens in certain hamlets by policy, such as Lake Newell Resort. And addition of powers of a peace officer. So we just added in there that we may enter a property during an investigation to inspect chicken coops for ensuring compliance with sections 8 sub 2 and to investigate the welfare of any animal. Municipal enforcement believes the proposed changes are reasonable and fair for residents for the intended use of the properties within hamlets and continues to support rural lifestyle, limiting the impact of neighboring properties and owners. So our preferred, sorry, got a little ahead of myself there. So the options we have is the department provides the following options, Option 1, council proceeds with second and third reading of the bylaw as written and or with amendments. Option 2, council does not support with second reading and provide direction to the department on how to proceed. Municipal enforcement recommends option 1. The proposed bylaw has been written with the current and future needs of the county, specifically with hamlets and hamlet lifestyle in mind. Municipal enforcement has considered Complaints have been made by public regarding animals and hamlets within the county, and the benefits of the proposed bylaw include a better suited penalty table, limiting processing times for chicken licensing and reducing public complaints and officer investigation time regarding livestock and hamlets. Any questions?
Thank you for that presentation. Does council have any questions? Adina? Councillor Sandra.
Not really a question, but I do have a concern about the changing the dog bylaw from 3 to 4. Most vets will tell you that 3 dogs is a pack. And there's quite a difference between, say, 4 Rottweilers or 4 Chihuahuas. So I'm kind of concerned about that.
So in my 8 years, like I've dealt with a lot of properties with multiple dogs. Yes, dogs will definitely have that pack mentality. We increased it, looking at different counties, different municipalities, what they allow, because usually after 4 dogs, you have to have a fancier license because you're running a kennel. But I've actually never really I've never dealt with any complaints of dogs in a 4-dog home. Having that pack mentality can happen, yes. We do have, that comes down to responsible pet ownership as well, right? So hopefully owners are able to keep on top of their dogs. A lot of people know, I guess a lot of it's going to come down to us just having to trust the public on that. But yeah, I've never had any, in my time at least, haven't had any issues with that.
Okay, thank you. Follow up?
Well, just in response to that, I did spend some time working at a vet clinic, and we did experience good animal owners who had dogs that were well trained, but it is a concern. Like 3 is, a veterinarian will tell you that 3 is considered is a pack.
Thank you. Mark, you've got some additional comments?
Just to respond to that, then therefore I present the question as to which direction council wants to go with it. If you want it rolled back to 3, that will be part of your decision in the bylaw.
Okay, thank you. Further questions? Lynette, you had a question?
I wasn't on the same vein as that, but I was curious about the grandfathering. I didn't see how we dealt with that. Were we letting anything be grandfathered, or?
Mark? With respect to that, really the grandfathering was all around if we were moving from 1 acre to 2 acres with livestock. We're sticking with the 1 acre that was in the existing bylaw, so grandfathering does not need to take place as per my opinion of things. If there's a misunderstanding or difference, please let me know.
Okay, thank you. Kelly, and then Greg, and then Neil.
I just wanted to thank staff for all the advertisement and the public engagement that you've undertaken on this bylaw. I understand that it is 2 bylaws being amalgamated into 1, and I appreciate that as well, because that helps not only council, but it helps ratepayers as well. So thank you for the work that you've done on this and that you've taken into consideration.
Thank you, Kelly. Greg, please.
Yeah, my question is in regards to the size of the land from 2 acres to 1 acre. My understanding from the old bylaw is that it was 1 acre corralled, and it was going to 2 full size. Am I wrong on that? Are we going back to the 1 acre corralled, or 1 acre specifically for livestock? Or and I may be wrong in interpreting it as 1 acre corralled originally.
As per the current bylaw, it was 1 acre roaming pen. So corralled you could be understanding it as a corral board. That's not what it was, because a 5 or 4 strand barbed wire fence was satisfactory. So really looking at parcel size, not roaming pen. And that's because officers potentially have to go in and measure out what the roaming pen is. It's easier for us to look at the map, click on the information button, it tells us exactly how big the parcel size is. And then additionally, the feedback from the survey was people pose the argument that, well, if I'm supplementing feed, why do my animals need a roaming pen of such a size? So if they're supplementing feed, parcel size doesn't really matter because it's not the land that's providing for the animal. It's what you're supplementing them with.
And for clarity with regard to size, we were contemplating expanding the required area to house certain animals, and we're proposing now no change, correct?
Yes, we were looking at increasing the parcel size to being 2 acres, which is not common within hamlets, a 2-acre parcel, which would eliminate livestock in hamlets. From the survey responses and whatnot, we've brought that back to 1 acre.
Good, thank you for that. Oh, Greg, a follow-up?
Yeah, so crowd probably wasn't the right wording. Roaming pen. So if someone has a house and a garage and a fenced in area of less than 1 acre, they're okay with the whole size of the parcel being 1 acre. You're looking at the entire lot size, is that correct?
Yes, the way that we approached it is we have access to land titles to know how big that parcel is. Whatever land you're actually affording the animal, that comes down to animal welfare care and whatnot, and that would be under the Animal Protection Act. So,
thank you. Neil, your comment?
Yeah, a little bit off topic, but not really. What's our policy for enforcing these bylaws, like as far as disclosing who the complainant is?
Disclosure of the complainant is never an option for officers. It doesn't matter who it is. Generally, the person that's causing the issue probably already knows who's reporting them because there's probably been some kind of altercation or engagement of sorts to let it be known. I've been through that process myself, and your neighbor will point you out, and an officer is not allowed to say yes, them, or nod that it's that way. It's a neighbor.
Doesn't the town have a policy where they won't accept a non-signed complaint?
Based on that, we do ask that complaints are in writing so that there can be follow-up action with who the complainant is, and that it just can't be at large and in general. So,
but I think what you're saying is that there is no disclosure of who the complainant is to the person being complained about. The only way that someone would know that if there had been other outside communication, but in terms of our officers, someone can make a complaint in terms of, it will not be passed on to the.
That's correct.
To the party that is being complained about, correct? Just for.
That's correct,
okay,
yes.
Thanks, yeah. Neil?
Yeah, I think as long as there's a signed document somewhere with the complaint on it, whether you disclose or not is your business, but it's got to be recorded somewhere because that could just open up a Hatfield McCoy kind of a thing.
Right, thank you. Dan, please.
If I'm understanding it correctly, Lake Newell Resort is not allowing chickens of any kind or whatever. So let's say the Hamlet Rolling Hills says, no, we don't want livestock. And I believe we have a few parcels that are over 1 acre. Is there a method that Hamlet can say, we don't want livestock, just the same way Lake Newell Resort doesn't want chickens?
I can definitely add in another subsection for it, and then it'd be the same way how we're going to deal with the hamlets, like Lake Newell Resort. Instead of having all these different areas listed in the bylaw, I thought best to just have these sections saying we just deal with it by policy. Then let's say if you get some residents from Rolling Hills, they sign, let's say majority don't want livestock, then yeah, we can just create a policy to bring it to council, and then that will prohibit livestock in those areas.
With I assume a grandfathering clause that would allow existing activity to continue.
A grandfathering or a timeline would be my proposal to make that sufficient.
Yeah. Dan, please.
Just for clarity, that's a hypothetical. I don't have I haven't been contacted by the residents of the hamlet saying they don't want it. I just want to know if there is a method that we have at our
Yeah, no,
disposal.
that's a good question. I think what I hear you say, we're not trying to fix something that isn't broken. So that's good. Yeah, Mark.
Yeah, and sorry, just in follow-up, I was trying to flip through it for Councillor Johnson, but number 12, as per this bylaw, talks about complaints. All animal control complaints must be made to the county in writing. All complaints must have the complainant's name, complainant's address, complainant's phone number, location of the offense, and detailed description of the complaint. That gets filed in those guys' software system. That's not released or disclosed to anybody unless something went civil into court.
However, I think that indicates clearly that we're not responding to anonymous complaints. And that's pretty important, I think. So that's good. I want to come back. Oh, somebody else have a question? I want to come back to Adina's comments, and also for clarity, for my own clarity. What are the changes that we're making? Just can you summarize the dog numbers? We're expanding to 4 from 3, 4 to 5, right?
No,
Okay.
3 to 4 on dogs, 4 to 5 on chickens.
Great.
Those changes are highlighted in bullets 1 through 7 on the second page of the RFD. And then if you look at the tracked changes copy of the bylaw, other minor grammatical corrections and stuff. So as Officer Leaks has highlighted, hamlet has been included as a definition, means an unincorporated urban area is defined by the municipal development plan, because that is up to council. Multi-lot residential subdivision means any group of parcels subdivided for the purpose of residential development. So any group, so your single lot acreage is not part of any of this. And the specified residential area has been terminated out of that because it was causing confusion, and that was a lot of where the feedback was coming from the public. So we got that out of there, and urban chicken was also omitted out of the definitions because hen and rooster are already part of the definitions. So,
Right. I appreciate that.
yeah. Otherwise, livestock continue to be allowed on parcels larger than 1 acre in hamlets. That's as per the existing bylaw. So if council turfed all of this today, that's as it is already. Eliminate a need for chicken licenses. You know what? We only had 2 or 3. We know that there's more out there. There aren't any complaints being received by the department. So why put people through the process and administration time for those licenses? It makes no sense. Increasing chickens in hamlets from 4 to 5, as Officer Leak spoke. If you read the schedule in the back about the animal units versus the parcel size, if you do 0.25 against the land for the animal units on chickens, or you're going to be down to 5. So that's why that rolled up. And added section to prohibit chickens in certain hamlets. That's honoring what was already in the urban chicken bylaw with Lake Noah Resort, because in that consultation, Lake Noah Resort said absolutely not for urban chickens. So that was in there. So carrying that forward. And then the addition of powers of a peace officer. It's already identified in the Animal Protection Act. We just thought we'd reiterate some of it here so it's clear to anybody reading our bylaw that an officer has the right to gain access to the property when a complaint's been received.
Thank you for that. And just for clarity, I think what you're basically indicating is that where we're landing today, considering second and third reading, as the forces that are responsible to support and defend this bylaw, you're comfortable with where we're at in terms of the experience we've had to date, and if that changes, we have to consider that in the future, right? Clear? Dan, please. Thank you.
I'd like to suggest a couple amendments. As long as in the bylaw you make allowances for a certain amount of square footage per hen, so coop size would be dependent on how many chickens there are. I'd like to amend the maximum to be 8 chickens, and I'd also like to see the amount of dogs down to 3, back to where it was. Because in Rolling Hills, we do have an issue with dogs, and most of those comments from Rolling Hills were about the amount of dogs that were already there. So The amendments, I'd like to see 8 chickens instead of 5, 3 dogs instead of 4.
Thank you. How do we deal with that by a motion?
I would make that a motion to amend it to those numbers.
Okay, in a single, yeah, okay, go ahead, Mark.
Before we go to motion, can we address Councillor Holly Johnson's questions that she asked so that council and the public are aware?
Thank you. Sorry about
I believe I've got answers or responses to all, and I think that needs to be considered in council's motion making. So in her absence, Councillor Holly Johnson identified that elk and bison are not really appropriate or safe animals to be in residential type area, as both are large and can cause extreme amounts of damage. I don't believe that they should be included in the appendix at all. If I can respond to that one first, I would suggest to council that the hamlet of Scandia has a 78-acre lot or parcel size on the west side of the hamlet currently in the boundary. It is 100 meters away from residential development. Is that appropriate? The council limit the ability of that landowner only because they fall within the boundary, and that would apply back to the boundary set in the MDP. The hamlet of Rolling Hills has a 3.5-acre lot, and as well as a 2-acre lot. Hamlet of Tilly has a 9.27-acre lot on the west end, which we've discussed around the MDP and future development of. It is intended to be residential development. I know that at one point we had one individual looking to purchase that, and what they were going to do with it was to put a residence on it, but it doesn't mean it was going to be multiple residences. Would it be appropriate to limit their ability on 9.27 acres within the hamlet boundary? There is also a 1.91 acre size lot in Tilly. Patricia, there is a lot that is 12.74 acres in size, another lot being 8.59 acres in size and 4.99 acres in size. Just so council has perspective on how large some of these lots are. Lake Newell Resort also has large lots within that area that, if they were fenced, could potentially be. That said, you're looking in the hamlet. That's not limiting what a neighbor immediately adjacent to the hamlet boundary could do with 160 acres or 20 acres. I don't know how council sees that working, because then you would also have to consider maybe putting a buffer zone in for elk and livestock in proximity to a hamlet, if you're looking at the types of animal and being a problem. That is that.
Can I just follow up with the question to staff with regard to that? You've had no exchange that would raise concerns about that issue with regard to the larger species, have you?
Nothing that I've been aware of in 15 years, and I think I can speak on behalf of my officers. The couple of bison operations that I've been aware of were north and east of Patricia by half a mile. Another one was just south of Millicent by, I'd say, about the same distance, half a mile more or less. And if memory serves me, there was an elk operation at one point in time, south and east of Duchess and north and west of Millicent.
Yeah, but we're talking hamlets.
Yeah,
No.
those are the only three
fine.
operations of sorts I've ever been aware of in Newell.
Okay, thanks. Kelly, question?
I just want to remind council that bylaws are a general blanket ruling for all of the county of Newell. We can't put a bylaw in place for a specific area or topic, or this is as general, I think, as we can be. And then if somebody has a dispute about it, they come to us and they bring their concern through enforcement and to us to discuss. So us picking a word or a phrase out of a bylaw that staff has proposed, I think is really difficult for staff to bring us documents. I just want to caution.
Okay, thank you. Matt, please.
Yeah, and maybe to just follow up on that, you know, this animal control bylaw has been edited, re-edited. I did a quick search in our system to see how many time entries refer to animal control, and you know, we're already over 200 hours on the animal control bylaw. We've engaged one-on-one with 60 plus individuals. I think it's been an excellent opportunity for public education. I think you could spend another 200 hours probably on this bylaw and you'd still be having the same conversations we're having today about do we go to 4 or 5 or 8 or 3 or there's actually no right answer. What I've observed through the conversation that the public has had with staff is I think the best policy is the good neighbor policy. When you move in and you want to do a thing that you think is brilliant, whether it's with goats or cattle or bison, have a coffee with the neighbor and see if they're amenable to what you're proposing to do. Builds community and it might minimize some of the conflicts, but kudos to staff, the community council for getting this next iteration of the bylaw. I think having the 2 bylaws rolled together is a win. And for staff, we've received an education as well from the public, which has been valuable. So we appreciate that feedback that we've got.
Thank you, Matt. Go ahead.
Okay, I believe that 3, 7, C, D, and E are all problematic as well, as they are too wide. Natural instinct plays a role. For example, cats hunt birds and mice. By this policy, that is not allowed, and the owner can be fined. Dogs may also kill animals that wander into their yard. Will owners be fined? This has never been a matter that has been dealt with by our officers. And further to that, if somebody's animal enters somebody else's property, that animal is not under the proper care and control of the actual owner, and whatever happens there becomes a civil matter. So I don't think we want to be getting into that realm of things. I know that we did hear that from at least 1 or 2 members of the public as well, being concerned that if their cat caught a mouse that they'd be charged. That we're not getting into that. Councillor Holly Johnson also asked to have an exclusion for bees as they are considered animals. With this policy, what would happen if there was a complaint against bees? Through my research, our bylaw is currently silent on cats, just as it's silent on bees. We do not have bees defined in the definition of livestock. Bees are also under the control of the Bee Act of Alberta. So I would like to leave the apiculture inspector to deal with the bee complaints and not get into that, as I don't believe we have any appointments of our officers to deal with it in the first place. So that would be my response to that for council's consideration. 6.5, I believe we should allow for dogs to be tied inside the truck box instead of just inside a vehicle. On a hot day in town, an animal is cooler and therefore safer in the back of a vehicle than inside a vehicle, and the window slightly open. As well, some dogs don't do well inside of a vehicle. This one ties back to Animal Protection Act, and what we have in here is in line with that. It's not out of line. I don't think we want to get into dictating or putting in exceptions one way or the other as to what's right, wrong, or indifferent with respect to that, in my opinion. Wouldn't it be healthier to have chickens be allowed in a small pen outside for exercise? Should this not be an option? This goes back to the comment about chickens always being kept in the coop. I guess that one goes back to council as to what are you willing to afford to people that keep chickens? And I would be more inclined to push you towards thinking about in a hamlet. Not all people have a 6-foot high fence. Some people have 4-foot high fences. Some don't have any fences. How are they going to be controlled? What size of pen? Is it the whole yard? I don't know. We as administration need some direction from council on if they're going to be allowed to roam outside of the coop. Additionally, from the survey.
Just a question on that, Mark. Our bylaw does state they need to be enclosed, right? Right.
Enclosed and kept in the coop.
Yeah, okay.
So we don't have a provision to say that you can put chicken wire or page wire fencing around your garden to allow them to go free roaming.
And we also haven't had requests for that, or have we?
Nothing much, not in any of my discussions with anybody I spoke to.
Good. Thanks. Go ahead.
Additionally, I'm not sure why we're looking at increasing dogs to 4, especially in hamlets. For same as Councillor Short, Rolling Hills expressing a lot of concerns already. Don't see the reason to increase, so I'll leave that to your decision-making process. And in the survey, people generally seemed in favor of chickens. So confused as to why we're only increasing by 1 from 4 to 5. I would say increase to 6 or 8 would be acceptable. Again, this is at council's discretion. All we did was look at what we allowed on parcels smaller than 1 acre in size and said that the math doesn't add up, so it had to be amended to be for 5 instead of 4. So we'll leave that one to council. Other than that, I just like to let council know the Animal Protection Act is there on top of our local bylaws and stuff. So we find ourselves dipping somewhat into some of that, but that's already in there at the provincial level. And the other point I want to make, because we did hear a lot about chickens and the livestock stuff, there's the premise identification regulation. Anybody that has livestock, poultry and such, you're supposed to have a premise identification number. And with that, that's for primarily tracing animals, potentially because of viruses and whatnot. They just want to know where the animals are bred, kept, raised, displayed, assembled, and disposed of, which we speak to in our bylaw, which no change on how you dispose of and keep. Why is it important? It's about the effective traceability system and emergency management plans, which we are the municipal government. If we have to evacuate people, it's not just about the people. We have a responsibility of the animals included in that. And BSE comes to mind, avian bird flu comes to mind. Those are important things in protecting not just small flock owners, but also the large cattle ranchers and poultry operations, because those are transmissible diseases that can wipe out entire flocks. So somebody with 5 urban chickens could take out 15,000 flock of a commercial producer. And this is some of the stuff to help protect against that maybe the public getting into small operations is not aware of. And with that, I'm not reading you the 150-page document, but Raising Chickens in Alberta, a guide for small flock owners. A lot of great information in here about what your responsibilities are with respect to that. And we are not getting into that with our bylaw in great detail because it's already at a provincial level. That's what I've got for you.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Any questions of Mark? I think a lot of them have been addressed already. We were close to accepting a motion in favor of the 5th chicken and opposed to the 4th dog, right?
Yeah, I wondered if we want to have a conversation about changing that number of chickens from 5 to 8. Maybe 6 is the right number, maybe 5 is the right number. I think 8 is fine, but saying that we allow 8 and everybody throws 8 and then half the hamlets are concerned, well, we've got nothing to go to say that it's a problem. And rolling back would be terribly hard to do. So maybe 5 is the right number. And I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts?
I guess it's not. I mean, anyone can respond to this. I would just say that we should try to avoid trying to fix something that isn't broken. And I'm not hearing that we've had a plethora of complaints with your situation pretty close to the way it was. So I think that's a good point that you make. And I'd agree with what you're saying with regard to that. So it is difficult to roll back if we don't have big demand for that, then, you know, we're spending a lot of time on something that might not be a problem. So, yeah. Neil?
How many people actually have chickens?
Yeah.
I think I've got like 5 that I can count off the top of my head. And only 3 of them, I believe that was in the last RFD, there's only 3 of them that actually had licenses. So until there was a complaint, we weren't going investigating anyway.
And no roosters. I'm concerned about that. Anyway, no, go on. Do you have a motion for us? Dan, or what's?
Yeah, I'd motion that I guess, does it have to be the whole thing, or do we make a motion, the amendments, and then the whole thing? Amendments first.
Amendments, yeah.
Okay, then.
And I would separate species, like deal with one at a time.
Yeah.
I'd say, yeah.
Then I'll motion that we make the amendment to have 6 hens in a hamlet.
Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, please indicate. Opposed? Okay, that's carried. Thank you. Okay, anything else? So we're moving to 6 chickens. Go ahead.
I'd also like to motion that we amend the amount of dogs to keep it at 3 and not move it to 4. So the amount of dogs to be 3.
Okay, any further discussion on that? All in favor of the motion, please indicate. Opposed? Okay, that's carried. Thank you. Now, do we need? Yep. Okay, we now, Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to make a simple comment that I'm going to recommend that we keep the schedule as it's attached for the parcel size with the animal units as it is, but we just include the language excepting hamlets where up to 6 hens are permitted. So I'm not going to change the schedule. No. It'll just have a notation underneath of it, except in hamlets where 6 hens are permitted.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So we now need a motion to approve the animal bylaw control for second reading as amended. Lynette, please. Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor of approval of the motion, please indicate. That's carried. Thank you. And we can go to third reading if at council's wish. Go ahead, Adina, please.
I move for third reading.
Third reading. Thank you. All in favor of third reading of the animal control bylaw? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, thanks. Okay, let's move to item number 11 and 11.1, administrative business, a road closure approval to proceed. Who's the supervisor of planning and development? Maria, please. Welcome.
Thank you. Okay, I just have to find the right one here. Sorry. Okay, thank you, Reeve. This road closure approval to proceed is in Division 6, approximately 4 kilometers south of Bizano, between Range Road 18.5 and Range Road 19.0. This road that's highlighted in yellow was closed by bylaw 1914-18. That was done in 2018. Since that time, the leaseholder has constructed a shop which encroaches on the road allowance. This was found through the assessment process. So the assessor went out and found the shop. And so now we have to rectify the situation. So in speaking with the applicant, we did discuss a few options. The applicant would like to proceed with the potential of closing the road allowance in yellow and selling it, or swapping land, I guess, in exchange for land along the north half of the south half of 6, which then would be registered as a road, closed and leased to the applicant. So typically, an agriculture building can be constructed in the agriculture general district without the benefit of a development permit, which is why we didn't know about that before. Assuming it meets the requirements set forth in land use bylaw. Unfortunately, this one crosses the property line. So I guess we are looking for direction from council if this is something that you would be interested in pursuing. It is recommended that council grant the approval to proceed and that the road plan be registered. There is, in talking with municipal services, so there is a bridge right here. So the province has stated that that bridge file that crosses the EID canal on Range Road 18.5 will not be replaced at the end of its useful life. So that means that a road allowance would be necessary should there be a requirement for a road to extend to those 2 road allowances on either side of Section 6. So municipal services has indicated that there may be a need in the future, however far that may be. The applicant would be responsible for all costs associated with surveying, with land transfers, and the plan registration. And again, like I mentioned, they would then enter into a lease agreement for the utilization of that land until such time the county requires it. And I'm available for questions.
Thank you for that, Maria. Kelly, question?
I just want to give kudos to staff, Maria. I did a visit with our ratepayer and she showed me the lay of the land and what we were looking at today. She had nothing but good things to say about the process, and she is seating today, otherwise she would be here to speak to this herself, themselves. But the proposed, I want to just share with council that the proposed trade or swap, if you will, is very amenable to improved terrain if we ever develop that new line, right? And I also wanted to share with you that in this shop, her grandfather had drilled a well right on the road allowance. So this is a historic oops, or something that has longer than the 5 years that this shop has been there. So I do recommend that we proceed with this proposed change, and I would make a motion to approve.
Excellent. Thank you. Appreciate that clarification, Councillor Christman. Thank you. Any further questions? Lynette, please.
Just more out of historical curiosity, how did they used to deal with these kinds of things? Like a road allowance was technically there, but it wasn't, right? Is that how that was usually dealt with? Like the fact that they would have drilled a well right there?
Go ahead, Maria, please.
Well, I think that's important information for all landowners to know where their property lines are. And there are assumptions made, and it has happened. And unfortunately, it can cost the county quite a bit of money when it comes to having to rectify these situations. You know, if something is built on the road allowance and a new route needs to be constructed, or, you know, it's, So we deal with it as it comes. When the assessor goes out, if he flags something like this, then it does come to planning and development. Irrigation is something that we're continuing to work on slowly, that encroachment and that use of land. We're also working with the EID so that they know and they flag anyone that is proposing or more irrigation, so they're aware of where their pivot points are going, where, you know, and whose land, where their land is and where the public land is. So it's an education process, and hopefully, you know, these things will be discussed and people will pay more attention to where their property lines are.
Good. Thank you for that explanation. Any other questions? Seeing none, we have a motion to approve the road closure and to set a public hearing, etc. All in favor of the motion, please indicate. That's carried. Thank you. Thank you for that, Maria. Now we will move to item 11.2, road closure. Yeah.
Thank you. This road closure, approval to proceed, is located again in Division 6, approximately 4 kilometers northeast of Bizano. This road allowance is also located within the Bizano IDP area. The applicant approached the county. They indicated that there has been littering and dumping of different forms of garbage on the lands adjacent to the road allowance. By closing and leasing the road allowance, the public access would be restricted. The applicant is encroaching on the road allowance adjacent to the east half of 33-2118 with a pivot. So this road closure would also allow for the continued irrigation of those lands. The most southerly portion of the proposed road closure is currently maintained by the county and used for access to the residents in the southwest of 27-2118. So closing this road allowance would also remove this portion of road from the maintained road list. The adjacent landowners have indicated that they are in favor of the proposed road closure. The proposed road closure has been circulated to internal departments. There was concern raised over the closure of an existing built road and the requirement that the road would be returned to the county standard should the lease expire and the road need to be reopened. So there are some options to deal with this. One, security could be taken to ensure the road is returned to its original state. The other option would be that language in the lease agreement ensures that in the event the county is requested to assume operation and maintenance of the roadway, it would be subject to the policy at the time for adding roads to the maintained road network. So a situation may be that there's a development permit for a residence on a portion of land that would be accessed off of this road. So in that event, it would be treated like any other development permit, that the road would be constructed to county standard. They would enter into a development agreement. Security would be put in place at that time, that the road would be built to county standard, and then after a certain period, municipal services would say, yep, this road is okay, and then they would take it over at that point. So as an example. So it is recommended that council grant approval to proceed with the road closure and lease. We would then move towards a public hearing where all adjacent landowners would be circulated to and affected parties, and then we could get a clearer picture of what the surrounding community would like to see in regards to this road. So there are options. So provide approval to proceed for the full length of road. So that's shown in the red option. So right from the south portion, that township road, 214 north. The other option would be to provide the closure only to the edge of the existing maintained road. So only undeveloped road allowance would be closed. So that's shown in option in the yellow. And the other option would be to refuse this road closure application and leave it as is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Maria. Are there questions? For clarity, your recommendation is that we close the entire road allowance. Go ahead, please.
So my recommendation, based on speaking with that neighbor whose access would be affected, would be to close the entire portion. However, after circulating to adjacent landowners, if there are some concerns regarding that could be changed during first reading and after the public hearing. So this process is really just to ensure that council is in favor of proceeding with this application.
Right, okay, so we'd have a second opportunity to consider the length of the closure. And I guess it's accurate to say that if we close the whole thing and we ever have to, if it ever needs to be revisited by a future council, it's just a bigger area that would need to be correctively managed to come to standard, correct? Although I suppose even if we don't close it, we probably won't be maintaining it to a high standard anyway. Is that accurate to assume?
That I guess I can't speak to because it is on the county maintained road. So so the county is, it is a county asset that municipal services is grading and ensuring that it is up to county standard.
Okay.
If it's closed, the whole red line, then that would be removed from that list, and then that wouldn't have to be visited again.
Right. Okay. Appreciate that explanation. Go ahead, Lynette.
So if the option were to be only closing part of it, we would have a dead end road, like it would come to a dead end. And how would you stop people from continuing on the closed part? Would there be a fence put up? What's the procedure there then?
Go ahead, Maria, please.
It would give the landowner the option to fence it. We also provide signs for road closures that say that this is a closed road and no public access is permitted. So as far as how the landowner would want to deal with stopping that trespassing and closing the road, it would be up to them to determine how they would do that. So if they close the full length, so that whole red portion, they could put a gate up right at the start, I suppose, if all of the neighboring landowners are in favor of that. And I guess the same could happen at the bottom of that or of the yellow portion. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Lynette.
So our roads are maintained for public safety. So if this road would no longer be maintained, then if somebody went on that road, they're traveling at own risk, kind of. Okay.
That's correct.
Yeah, thank you. Any further questions or direction? We have a recommendation. Adina, please.
I make a motion that we go with option 1.
Okay, approval as recommended. Any further discussion? All in favor, please indicate. Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Thanks, Maria. Item number 11.3, correct? Capital items for consideration, Duchess Recreation Arena. Matt, please, we can manage this in a few minutes, eh?
I guess we'll see. Yeah, I'll let the board representatives do the heavy lifting, but I will introduce this item to council for consideration. Request for decision is in front of you as referred to council from the Recreation Parks and Culture Board of the Duchess Recreation Area. The Ag Society up in that area is the main recreation service provider. They've done a lot of work the last number of years getting their 5-year capital plan together, prioritized. You have that updated list in front of you. The specific projects, you can see the price tag is a little bit less than what we had initially budgeted coming into the year. So that's a good news story. And I'll leave it to our board reps to provide any other background, but we are looking for a motion to approve funding 1/3 of the total 2023 capital expenditures as recommended by the board, with funding from the Recreation Fund up to a maximum of $64,667.
Thank you, Matt. Is there further information or questions? Kelly, please.
I would make a motion to approve. I also have a question. If there's any conversation at the village, at the Recreation Board level about recognition towards the county for their input into recreation. I've seen some movement in other municipalities where shared logos are being put on documentation. I've seen notices in paper where the county is being recognized for their contribution to the village or the town in our situation. So I'm just wondering if there's been any conversation about recognition of county dollars going into the village coffers.
Amanda, have you got
The village
comment on
does
that?
recognize that the county does pay a portion of this, and they're very thankful for that. So it is recognized verbally. Whether it's written in the documents or signage, I'm not sure, but I can certainly check into it. But we know verbally it is recognized.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? We have a motion to approve. Ready for the question? All in favor of the motion, please indicate. That's carried. Thank you. I'm going to suggest we move to 11:4 at Matt's the direction. Meeting with Grasslands Schools. Call for agenda items. Matt, please.
So this would be your last kick at the can before we're actually together with our friends from Grasslands School Division and our neighbors from Bassano, Duchess, and Rosemary. You have a summary of the items on the agenda in front of you. So agricultural education from Councillor Holly Johnson. Ideas for making communities more attractive to newcomers from Councillor Dan Short. And the Village of Duchess has added Duchess School greenhouses as a discussion item. So we're happy to accept any others. And what's our cutoff? Noon, June 2nd.
Okay, Kelly, please.
Could we just put on there asking how the partnership with Ag Services and Grasslands and our partner municipalities, how that's working for them?
Okay. Greg, did you have anything to add? You know, no, you're good. Okay, good. Appreciate that. Anyone else have anything that we want to add to the agenda with Grasslands? Seeing none, I think we're good. That completes us to item 11.4. We have a public hearing beginning in about 4 minutes. I'm going to suggest we take 4 minutes and reconvene with the public. Do we need the motion? Well, we'll take the motion when we reconvene to move to a public hearing. Thank you. Okay, let's call this meeting back to order. And it is just past 11:30, so we need a motion to move into a public hearing. Kelly, thank you. All in favor that we move to a public hearing, please indicate. That is carried. Good morning, everyone. For information, I will say that we will be recessing this public hearing if it is not complete by about 10 to 12, as we are hosting the Brooks Bandits Board of Directors and some team members this morning, and so we will recess about 10 to 12. We have guidelines in place with regard to public hearings, and we will follow those. We ask you to be brief in terms of your presentation. We won't read all of the guidelines this morning, other than to say this will be kept an orderly process. At this point, we will move to staff to present the details of our public hearing, please, and welcome Brian from ISL.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead, Zachary.
Good morning. So the purpose of this bylaw is to adopt an updated and revised municipal development plan for the County of Newell. So we'll begin by passing it off to Brian for his presentation.
Good morning, and thank you for having me today.
Brian, could you lean right into that mic? Yeah, just get a good morning. Perfect. Excellent.
Thank you for having me today. I'm here to give a brief overview of the municipal development plan process, including the planning process and timeline, comparing some high-level comparisons between the proposed municipal development plan and the current one, the circulation feedback that was received, and the nature of some of the proposed edits today, and am available for any questions and answer that may arise. So as everyone here understands, the MDP is amongst the most important planning documents in the municipality, and it provides a framework for the long-term development of the county. It is a statutory plan, which is adopted by local bylaw. And it provides this framework for more specific plans, such as area structure plans, conceptual schemes, or area redevelopment plans. The current MDP was adopted in 2010, last updated in 2013, and a lot has changed over the last 13 years, which is what instigated the update to the proposed MDP in front of us today. With respect to process, we got started in June 2022, and there was 4 key steps in the process. Startup, which involved meeting with yourselves as council and the technical committee, as well as an initial online survey. We then moved into drafting content for the MDP, and this culminated in a 3-month-long engagement process, including a physical open house in December and a virtual open house and online survey that ran from December 12th to January 31st. And then some direct Hamlet engagement led by Zachary, your municipal intern, who's done a good job throughout this process. We are at the very end of the 4th step there, which is finalize and adopt, and brings us to our public hearing today. So when we look at the new municipal development plan to the old one, there's some things that stand out that are a little bit different in terms of the organization and the content, and some of the things that we did that I wanted to bring to your attention. Policies have been organized into 3 areas: goals that promote growth, goals that make connections, and goals that focus on providing services. There was considerable updates to the maps, including a countywide future development map, maps that show hamlet boundaries, and that's something that was in need. It was an identified need at the start of the project to delineate the actual boundaries of the hamlets. And then we updated the confined feeding operation exclusion areas maps, something that came up through the process. A key part of the updated MDP is the identification of growth hamlets and then the identification of rural hamlets. So the growth hamlets are Lake Newell Resort, Rolling Hills, Scandia, and Tilly. And the policies within the MDP promote growth in these communities and prioritize the development of future assets within them. And then for the rural hamlets of Bow City, Castles, Gem, Patricia, and Rainier, the policies within the MDP promote sustaining these communities and supporting assets in the community over their lifetime. Last but not least, a key development in the new MDP is the creation of development requirements. What these development requirements do is they outline local development considerations and they provide clear direction for requirements when preparing a new area structure plan or conceptual scheme within the county. Furthermore, there are clear requirements for what technical studies are required to support the development of an area structure plan or conceptual scheme. So if someone wants to come in and do a new large-scale development, there's now guidelines within your municipal development plan that provide them with a roadmap for how to get that done. With respect to circulation and the nature of the edits, so the first reading, as you know, was on April 20th. And the draft MDP was actually circulated in two phases, once before the first reading to your municipal neighbors and referral agencies, and then again subsequent to first reading. With respect to the comments received on the first circulation, the City of Brooks, Town of Bassano, Village of Duchess, as well as the NRCB provided some feedback in this first circulation, and the MD Tabor responded with no concerns at the time. There was edits made to the draft, and they're incorporated in the copy that you have, which focused on the interpretation of some policies and the inclusion and exclusion of certain terminology. So there's just some targeted updates made to the MDP. Furthermore, the NRCB made suggestions to help provide clarity and minimize any misinterpretation of policies as they relate to confined feeding operations. And Zachary's actually going to go over some proposed amendments in alignment with the feedback received from the NRCB. With respect to the second circulation, so post first reading, there was a feedback from the MDU Tabor that said no comment. Good to recognize that they received it and had no comments on the MDP. And as I understand it, there's been some additional feedback received from Ducks Unlimited, and Ducks Unlimited was engaged months ago in the process, and they've got some last minute feedback that Zachary as well will provide to everyone here today. And that's it. That's the high level overview of the process. Over to Zachary.
Okay, so I'll go over a few more details, especially the proposed edits, and then we'll open up the floor for questions. So the recommendation from staff today is that pending the outcome of the public hearing, a second and third reading be given to the bylaw 2057-23 to adopt the MDP with the attached recommended amendments as per Schedule A. And I will break down those the contents of Schedule A shortly. For previous council direction, as Brian alluded to, was giving a first reading on April 20th. A list of formatting edits recommended by staff, as well as the following, which were the addition under 4.2D of free support IDP ICF policies, policy and initiatives, the removal from Schedule A.3 A4 of the word residential, and the addition under 5.5 of F, continue to support the Joint Services Committee, the Grasslands Regional FCSS, and the Newell Housing Foundation in delivering economic development, social programming, and housing to the community. And to avoid repeating any of the points that Brian just spoke to, I'll bring up a couple other points that council should consider. So it is section 632 of the MGA that identifies the requirements for MDPs for all municipalities in the province. And the county's MDP is desired to be a living document that can adapt to changing conditions of periodic reviews. In addition to the public engagement that Brian has laid out, please note that each updated version of the MDP has been made available to the general public on the county website since late March. And should council give second and third reading to the MDP today, it will be adopted as a statutory plan for the County of Newell, meaning that bylaw 1705-10 and amendments thereto, being the former MDP, would be rescinded. So I'll speak to the comments that we received from the NRCB, and these were received in early April. We didn't act on them at the time of first reading, but we have now come up with recommended amendments, which I'll put on the screen. The comments received from the NSRB in response to the circulation draft were focused on the CFO policies on DP, so particularly section 3.5 and the associated maps. Discussions were held with the NRCB to address their comments after first reading. And they have stated that their objective is not to influence or comment on any of the county's land use planning objectives, but rather to suggest ways to help provide clarity and minimize opportunities for misinterpretation of the NDP's content. And for context, the NRCB is regulated by the Agricultural Operations and Practices Act, the AOPA, and they are required to ensure an application is consistent with the land use provisions of the relevant municipalities and DEP. Any provisions respecting tests or conditions is not considered. They are required to ignore anything that is considered a test or condition. So the attached Schedule A, as you can see on the screen, encompasses the amendments recommended by staff, which seek to bring the CFO policies of Section 3.5 more in line with land use provisions. And a revised set of maps is also included, and these maps represent all parcels in the county to which CFO exclusion areas applies. And the NRCB has expressed their support for these amendments. So if council has questions about the proposed or the recommended policy, and I can provide the reasoning why, especially the text in red is recommended. And before we move on, I'll speak to the comments we received from Ducks Unlimited. So we spoke to them yesterday, and the discussion revolved around having policies in NDP to address the preservation and restoration of wetlands as it relates to the impacts of development and of agricultural uses. And we received a package of proposed policies or policy amendments, which, because we have received them so late in the process, we were unable to get proper feedback from council or the technical committee on their feasibility more so. So staff will keep these suggested policies in mind for future updates to the MDP. However, with regards to 5.4C of the MDP, the addition of the wording in accordance with provincial regulations is something that council can consider adding today to enforce the procedures already in place. So the policy would read 5.4C, require adequate development setbacks to minimize the impact and disturbance to natural water bodies, including wetlands and riparian areas, and the addition would be in accordance with provincial regulations. So the response options available to council today are option 1, to provide second and third reading to the bylaw with recommended amendments as per Schedule A. Option 2, to deny bylaw 2057-23, and option 3, to cancel table second reading of bylaw 2057-23 to a future meeting. And the preferred strategy is that the recommended amendments as per Schedule A are adopted as presented. And it is at council's discretion to make further amendments based on the comments received from external municipalities and organizations. An easy thing to do if we have received no comments. And for information, in accordance with section 216.45 of the MGA, after considering the representations made to it at the public hearing, council may make any amendments to the bylaw it considers necessary and proceed to pass it without further advertisement or hearing. And as follow-up action, administration will implement the list of amendments as directed by council as part of second and third readings. And section 2.1, being the section for formal circulation and public hearing, will be updated to reflect the content that we heard at the public hearing. That is all for my presentation. I'll open up to questions.
Thank you for that. Does council have any questions? Or not any public? Anybody in the public have questions or council for that matter. Are there any questions directed to staff? Go ahead, please come to the table and introduce yourself, and then state your question, please. I think that mic just needs to be flicked on. Oh, you got it? Thanks, Terry. No, the light will go on when it's on. Yeah. There.
Yeah, thank
You're
you.
live. Thanks. Go ahead, Terry. Please introduce yourself and go ahead.
Thank you. You know, things are bad if I'm here talking. I'm not a public speaker, please bear with me. I'd like to thank the county councillors for being interested in taking the time to listen to the ratepayers.
Please just introduce yourself.
Sorry.
Public record. Thanks, Terry. Yeah.
My name is Terry Dahl. I'm from Division 8, Duchess. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to listen to the ratepayers. I hope you all continue to listen and consider your implications, your decisions on our county and our families. I'm here today to express my concern for the direction the County of Newell is going. I grew up in this county and would love my grandkids to grow up here as well. I've written letters and sent many emails in regards to government overreach, both provincially and federally. We have the ability to make changes here at the local level. In regards to the MDP plan, in January, I asked one question. Why is the United Nations on your first draft of the MDP plan? Yes, it was removed. A simple removal of 2 words is not enough. The County of Newell is complying and supporting Justin Trudeau and his United Nations World Economic Forum Climate Change Net Zero Sustainable Development Goals, aka Agenda 2030. I've done my homework on Justin Trudeau and his endless scams and scandals. There's something new every day. His corruption seems to be getting harder and harder to ignore. What kind of investigation hires a Trudeau Foundation member to investigate the Trudeau Foundation? What a joke. Justin will be lucky to get another $200 violation slap on the wrist. There is zero accountability at the federal level. What kind of kangaroo court, with this kind of kangaroo court investigations? Accountability needs to start at the top. Justin and his excuses are easy to see through. How many scandals, how many payouts, how many more Canadians, how much more are Canadians expected to put up with?
Terry, can I just we need to get to specific recommendations for changes to the MDP, if you could, please.
Canadian taxpayers are not happy. We here at the local level, especially in Alberta, can see through the corruption. When you follow the money, you will find the County of Newell and our elected officials are supporting Trudeau and the United Nations climate change agenda, their accelerated plan. I'll quickly explain. Trudeau announced your $13 billion to Volkswagen Group, who you can easily find on the World Economic Forum website. The same Volkswagen Group was sued in 2015 for an emissions scandal. Of course, Trudeau is giving them billions. Scandals are right up his alley. The same United Nations World Economic Forum are right here in Alberta showing you. His plans are here in plain sight. Trudeau gave $30 million.
Terry, we're under a real time crunch. We need specific recommendations for edits to the MDP.
I am getting there. Please
Okay.
bear with me.
Get there quick, please.
In 6 years, Trudeau has put our country in debt levels you have never seen before. I have lost my spot. The United Nations World Economic Forum is tracking and tracing us with their digital ID. They'll sell to the travelers and be the first to keep us in their 15-minute cities. I don't know about you, but my family is outside the 15-minute circle. In below 30-degree temperatures, I'm sure your mandated electric car won't get you there and home again every day.
What are your specific recommendations that relate to our MDP today?
My recommendations are companies like SNC-Lavalin are used by ISL depending on their location, are their go-to engineers. My recommendation, I'm shaking so bad, sorry. My recommendation is for County of Newell to reject the United Nations United Way ISL MDP plan altogether. Thorhild County near Red Deer did just that. Counties across Canada are refusing the government overreach. Just as recently as last month, the United Nations was linked to a report and calls for decriminalization of all sexual activity with children. Seriously, let me say that again. Decriminalization of
Carrie,
all criminal.
Specifically, you're proposing that we just cancel don't approve the NDP as it's presented?
Specifically, I am.
Okay.
And you can see from ISL Engineering on their own Twitter site, the CEO has tweeted and retweeted World Economic Forum policies and ideas.
Okay, well, that is what it is. We have your specific recommendations.
ISL Engineering is supporting child sexual activity.
No, this needs to be.
The United Nations it's on, you can find it, it's easy.
You really need to, you've made your presentation, the specific request you have, but the added information is outside the realm of what's needed here.
Choosing to support it will also says everything for the county councillors. There is nothing in the MDP plan for recall election. I know, you don't want to hear anything. It's on. Publicly, I wouldn't want to be anywhere. Social media, the United Nations.
Okay.
You want to shut me down? We have no. I've tried. I've asked about the United Nations. Nothing has been done.
Yeah. Are there any other, we need to take other options at this point. There are other people who want to present at this point. So I'm going to ask you to move away from the light, please. Is there anyone else who has a specific recommendation with regard to the MDP?
Harold Stedel from Tilly. We're always going to have problems, but the main thing is that we're here to not wreck the earth, but subdue the earth. And I'm just wondering, the harshness and the changing in direction that seems to be there, and the force does seem to be coming from, not from the good people sitting here. It's coming from outside. And because...
Okay, do you have something specific relating to the MDP? We're going to break here right away, and we'll pick this up after the noon hour.
Yes. Do you have children or family that you want to protect?
No, specific to the MDP, what are the changes you're proposing?
Yeah, I don't have anything that specific other than there is a lot of people concerned about what the proposals are suggesting, and we need to talk more about that before someone decides what happens to my grandchildren. And if you have children,
thank you.
You need a future.
I'm gonna break at this point. We're gonna recess our public hearing till after the noon hour. So with that, recess. Pardon me. Yeah, I'll invite the Brooks Bandits and their board of directors in. No, it's not closed. It's just recessed. Yeah. I'll take their hats off. I'll take their hats off. Okay. Yeah, have them come in, yeah. Come on in. Thank you all for coming in this morning, and congratulations from the County of Newell to the Brooks Bandits, the team, the board of directors, and everyone associated with the team. We're proud to have the players in our communities over the last year, a number of years for a few of you, and your remarkable success. The CRA and the Brooks Bandits have been a point of pulling the community together for many years, and it's no accident that you've won a third consecutive Centennial Cup. We're really proud of you, and we just want you to know that. And that's the reason for inviting you in this morning and this afternoon. Thank you all for coming, and our congratulations also to the local board of directors who has worked hard over many years to get us where we are today. We know from the priorities of this team that we're looking at a character group of young people team, and we're proud of you and encourage you as you go forward. You probably won't be in Brooks for a lot of winters on an ongoing basis, but we know you'll remember the ones that you've been in this region, and we're simply here to say congratulations to all of you and to the strong initiative that has created the possibility of this to succeed. So welcome here. We'll enjoy spending a little time together, and thanks for coming in. Does anybody want to say anything? Sure.
All right. Yeah, sorry, I'm not really prepared for this, but no, I think everybody, I'd regret if I didn't tell you guys how grateful we are for you and all the support, because at the end of the day, everything we do doesn't mean anything if we don't have the city backing us 100% with all the support. So, yeah, it's a full city effort to bring these championships in, and we're super grateful for all the support, because it's not like that most places in Canada, and that's what makes this such a special place to play. So yeah, thank you very much for that.
Thanks. Let's head downstairs and have lunch. We'll get a chance to exchange. So well, we've got staff that tell us where to and how to get there. That's good.